Today's guest is a very special, near and dear guest to my heart. We have Hana DeGuzman, and she has been part of Team Fearless since 2021. She has worn many roles as a coach, social media manager, and retreat leader, and so many things behind the scenes that a lot of you guys probably don't even see. Even this very podcast, she's pulling out amazing nuggets and quotes and just amazing all around because she's passionate about what she does. But what many of you might not know is that as of this weekend, she is an official graduate of Boston University with her Master's of Education in Counseling and Sport Psychology. She is also going on a new endeavor as a mental performance intern with the Arizona Diamondbacks organization later this summer. And so I have her here with me live. Hana, welcome to the pod.
Hey, V. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
This is so funny. We had our team call earlier today, and it's like, okay, see you later. And we just get to hop on a podcast and hit record. So, okay, so
I
for the
know.
Fearless
Here we
fan,
are.
let's go. Let's dive in. Tell us where you're at, what you're doing. Obviously, you're prepping for graduation, but give us a day in the life, I guess, as of this week.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like you said, I'm graduating soon in just a few short days. I'm currently in Boston, Massachusetts. I feel like I've just had several different places that I've gotten to call home within the last couple of years. Um, yeah, just really preparing for graduation, just finished up my master's program, finished up classes, turned in all the assignments, all that great stuff. And yeah, and you made typical day in the life of, formerly when I was in class.
Yeah, you're kind of in transition. Give us a day in the
Yeah.
life if I were to interview you a month ago. What was Hana up
Okay.
to?
Yeah. So, like AB said, I am, I just finished my master's in counseling and sports psychology. So that includes both the clinical mental health kind of rotations and practicums, as well as more of applied mental performance as it relates specifically to sport. So maybe like a month ago, I was full-time student taking classes in the evening. And turning that background in the mornings, I was at Harvard University, actually, working as an intern there for both the clinical mental health side and mental performance. So, in the sports psychology, doing one on one sessions, team sessions with, different athletic sports teams that they have there, counseling, all of the good stuff. And then on the weekends, I would typically work more with my applied sports psychology placements. So I had some basketball teams, I've had baseball teams, hockey teams, soccer teams, all of that. So definitely busy, busy bee. Feels weird to be done. Feels very surreal, like I should be running around from point A to point B. But yeah, nice to have a break. Nice to have a fresh breath of fresh air.
I love it. And
Yeah.
so here's kind of a question. If you could choose moving forward, I know you're really
Yeah.
passionate about softball and baseball, but what was that like working with other sports that maybe, I mean, obviously you didn't play all of those sports, but which one was your favorite to kind of work with?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I have to say I think working with my basketball teams were like my favorite in terms of, and my background is in softball, obviously playing softball through college, and just softball and baseball being in my wheelhouse. Like that's the sport IQ that I know the most. And so I was definitely really nervous going into working with all of these other teams. Um, just because I was like, I don't really know these sports. I don't know the lingo as much. I don't have that high IQ. But it really pushed me out of my comfort zone a lot in terms of working with athletes that from sports backgrounds that I just really was not familiar with, and just getting to understand and like step into their world of, yeah, how difficult is it being a collegiate basketball player or a soccer player or a high school hockey player. And so I think definitely, I mean, I think on the women's basketball front, I love women's sports. And so it was awesome getting to watch my team. Um, and I think basketball is just a crazy sport where it's much more faster pace than softball and baseball, obviously. And there's just so many inner workings with the mental game that totally go unseen and untalked about. So it's really cool to kind of use, my mental performance experience already into a different sport. So yeah, it was awesome.
Well, and just the pace alone, right? Think
Right.
about you make a mistake or you miss a rebound or you miss your shot. You don't really have a chance to sit in
Hmm.
that mistake.
Yeah.
You have to run across the court. And so it's like a volley sport, like volleyball or tennis.
Yeah.
It's just such a, um, when would you, I guess, as far as coaching those sports, when would you coach them to do those failure resets and self talk and focal points and breathing? When do you have time for that in sports like that?
I think a lot of that comes down to just a lot of face to face time with my athletes and with the teams that I worked with. It was a lot of like going to practices or going to pregame warm ups, or in the mornings when they just had a shoot around, prior to, like a couple hours prior to their game. A lot of that is just standing on the side, as opposed to like sitting in a dugout for baseball and softball teams. I was maybe sitting on the bench or at the end of the bench. And so if they were getting subbed out for, you know, 3 minutes during a game. If they had 60 seconds in between that to just take a reset, they would maybe come chat with me. Um, or again, just like in the middle of practice, maybe they're done with the drill, the end of practice. You just find a lot of different pockets that, again, just coming from a background of maybe a quote unquote slower paced sport like softball, you definitely have a lot more downtime to like sit and ruminate in your thoughts. So using that and thinking, okay, how can I deliver, mental performance, or how can I deliver these skills in a easily digestible way and in a quick way where my athletes could understand it, take it in, and be like, okay, yep, next play. Of course, I'm not on the court with them, and they're not going to be, uh, doing practicing these things in the moment super intentionally. But that's where I think doing things at practice in the off season, prior to games, during warmups, all of those little times and pockets of times and those little nuggets of space that you can take up, I think is super important. So I've definitely learned a lot about different sports and the different paces of different sports and like where to find those pockets of time.
Well, and I think that's something that you do exceptionally well, seeing you coach inside our programs and with one on one athletes, and even at the retreat. You, and we talked about this before we hit record, but you have
Mhm.
such an intentional way of slowing down and connecting and
Mhm.
holding space, whereas someone like me is go, go, go and high energy. I think that there's this ebb and this flow and this beauty of different coaches are going to bring different things to the table.
Right.
Talk
Yeah.
about what we had talked about before we hit record about how here you are in your master's and you're learning how to build rapport, which sounds so common sense, right? Of like how to build relationships with your athletes and how to do this. Can you kind of talk about that? What does that look like on the academia side?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think it was definitely intimidating in the academia side of week one of this program back in fall of 2022 when I was first kind of thrown into the fire, thrown to the wolves, as we call it. And we're just learning so much where it's like, how do I even begin to incorporate all of this into the work that I'm doing with my teams? I'm the type of person that is like, I need to know everything, I need to learn everything before I can actually go apply it. And so this program has really challenged me because with all of our placements and all of my internships, we were thrown into the fire pretty much, yeah, like week one, week two of our program. So a lot of that came with, okay, well, we've learned X amount in the first week or so of this program. I'm not sure where this is gonna, how I'm gonna incorporate this to my teams or what's gonna happen next. So I really focused a lot on just when I had that face to face time with them, when I was there in person at practices, at games, weightlifting, training sessions, I just made sure to make connections with them and just have them be seen, have them be heard. I love this quote of, no one cares, or wait, what's that quote? Yeah, no one cares about how much you know until they know about how much you care. And
Yes.
I absolutely love that, and that has really gotten me through this entirety of the program. I mean, I feel like I have a lot of imposter syndrome sometimes when it comes to, what do I know? How many years have I been in this field? I'm just an intern, quote unquote, just an intern, or I'm, just a master's student. I think I know a lot more than I give myself credit for. And so I get really nervous when working with athletes or teams or coaches. And I'm like, I feel like I need to know everything. I need to be the textbook that they can open up and just read everything. But really, it's, having my athletes and my clients feel heard and feel seen. That opens them up to a whole world of possibilities of them being able to actually do the work themselves. And so I think the whole idea of learning while doing was huge throughout my entire time here in this program, where I definitely had to let go a little bit of like my perfectionistic tendencies or my tendencies of I need to know everything before going out and doing something. And a lot of that just comes with the fear of failure that I feel like has just been so ingrained with me and has definitely there's been some adaptive practices to that and it's gotten me this far. But through this program and just in general learning all of the things in sports psychology and mental performance and mental health counseling, learning while doing is just something that I think I'll take with me forever.
I love that. Well, and I think that's the mistake that a lot of people make in assuming if I have the degree, I'll, and maybe I'm treading on thin ice here, but I think that there's a lot of practitioners and mental performance coaches that
Mhm.
maybe have the degrees but have a really hard time relating to their athletes. And I
Mhm.
think so often, I think, the NCAA is coming out with, more guidelines for this in the coming year. But essentially, when you have one, mental health resource or mental performance psychology resource for an entire
Yeah.
athletic department, and you have a coach that's working with multiple teams and they're stretched really thin, it's like, how can you possibly get that relationship and that rapport with
Mhm.
your athletes? And so I think you're hitting on that really, really well, and that your master's program did a phenomenal job of giving you that face to face time, giving you that real world experience, because
Yeah.
it's not just sitting in an office with a tissue box.
Mhm.
It's this is about becoming mentally stronger. And so there is that fine line. Can you kind of explain for those that are listening as a parent, as coaches, or even players that might be listening to this? The cool thing about your master's is that you were doing both practicums in clinical counseling
Yeah.
and applied sports psychology. So, can you
Mhm.
kind of talk about what is the difference between mental health and mental performance in your mind?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great question. I think this line gets blurred very often, especially when people hear sports psychology or you just hear the word psychology. You just immediately might think mental health. And while both go hand in hand, and I think both, are super important for an athlete's well being and success, just in general, I think the field of mental health is more focused on generally helping people who might be struggling with mental health disorders, mental health illnesses, whether that be anxiety, depression, trauma, while mental performance is kind of more, I like to say sports specific. It's not always sports specific, but it's more so, these tools and these strategies that you learn from confidence or performance anxiety. And of course, there's that anxiety buzzword of is that performance anxiety in sport or is that anxiety on a daily basis. Um, and so I think, mental health is more so general well being. Maybe it's socially, maybe it's family related, maybe it's academic related. And mental performance, I like to think of it as, again, sport specific. And I think there's two different hats that I'm wearing. And I'm like, okay, does this require my clinical mental health counselor hat or does this require mental performance hat? Um, and I've had the privilege of being able to wear both hats at once and figure out what would be the best treatment plan or like intervention to use. Um, but it's definitely been interesting to kind of see the best of both worlds of when I hear an athlete say, like, I feel like I've been really experiencing performance anxiety. It's like getting to the root of, okay, are they feeling performance anxiety due to a fear of failure, maybe, or a fear of, consequences that might come if they strike out, versus are they feeling this anxiety on a daily basis? Like immediately when they wake up in the morning or when they're walking to class or they're giving a presentation. Um, so yeah, I think mental health and mental performance are definitely interrelated with one another, but there can be a distinction between both.
Yeah. And I think as far as knowing what route to take or what skill to
Hmm.
use or what to help them kind of walk through is they can be absolutely applied to both. I mean, think about the
Yeah.
girls that have gone through the Fearless Warrior program. They get to the end of the program and they say, oh my gosh, I used this technique before taking a
Right.
big test,
Yeah.
or I was nervous for this tryout. And obviously that's sport related, but they kind of have this aha moment of,
Hmm.
oh, well, I can use this beyond softball. It's like ding, ding,
Yeah.
ding. You just
Yeah.
discovered the greatest secret of like, yes, these are life skills. It's going to
Hmm.
serve you far beyond sport. But I think you make a really great point of performing better in your sport. You don't have to wait until there's something wrong
Hmm.
to search out those resources. And again, before we hit record, we should just hit record right away. I know your backstory a little bit of how you discovered mental performance, how we connected through that mutual love of mental performance. Talk about your college years and where that kind of self-discovery came from.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Memory lane, walking down memory lane. I love it. So I graduated from the University of Puget Sound in 2018, or sorry, 2022. Graduated high school in 2018. Um, University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington. I'm originally a California native, from San Jose, California. So it was definitely a jump to move out of state. But yeah, played softball all 4 years there. I was a lefty slapper. I was an outfielder. And originally going into college, I knew that I wanted to pursue a career in sports or at least working with athletes. And originally, I loved the idea of being a physical therapist or an athletic trainer or a sports medicine doctor, anything that I could do kind of on that physical realm. So I actually studied exercise science, which is essentially kinesiology, back in undergrad. And then I just loved the biomechanics and the kinesiology behind the human body and how our bodies work and recover through sport and how to utilize that for optimal performance. Um, and then my junior year of college, I think I was looking through YouTube videos, or I remember like struggling at one point in during the season. And I think I just Googled how to eliminate performance anxiety or how to bounce back from failure or how to be a better softball player. And so many things came up that, so many buzzwords of like how to increase confidence or how to use different tools like visualization and self talk. And that was kind of, those are the first times that I was hearing of these, phrases or these, what I now know as tools and interventions. Um, and so I was doing a lot of research on my own during my junior year of college, just to increase my own competencies within softball and just increase my own confidence. Um, and little did I know, I think it was the summer going into my senior year of college where I realized, oh my gosh, I have seen so much growth. I have seen so much improvement, not necessarily just on the physical side, but the way that I now think about my sport, the way that I think about making mistakes, the way that I think about setbacks and how I approach adversity. And so many aspects of the mental game that I don't think I was ever really intentionally taught throughout my softball career were coming to light. And then again, doing so much more research, like sitting in front of my laptop or sitting on my phone, trying to Google all these different things. And then I realized I could actually make a career out of sports psychology and mental performance. And pretty much summer going into my senior year of college, I was like, yes, I'm hitting the ground running. I realized I was so much more excited about sports psychology and mental performance than I had ever been about physical therapy and athletic training. And kind of here we are now. And then, we both met, we connected over on social media the fall of my senior year of college. Again, when I was Googling and searching people on Instagram, trying to find, experts and coaches and mental performance consultants in the field of, can I network with people or can I get a day in the life of what this looks like? And the rest is history. Here we are now.
Here we
But
are.
I just, yeah, our love of sports psychology and mental performance has totally brought us here. And I'm so grateful. Yeah, my open-mindedness, thank goodness, my my college self. Yeah, here we are.
I love when you were coaching the girls. I vividly remember there was a call that you were teaching inside the Fearless Warriors, and we were talking about grounding techniques and
Yeah.
your technique in the outfield of tracing your glove
Yes. Oh my
and
gosh.
giving the girls a real life example of like, hey guys, we're teaching you these skills, but I've actually tried them and I
Hmm.
actually use them. And we still even use the image of you. There's like a really cool picture of you where you're looking at your bat before you're about to step
Yeah.
into the
Yeah. Yeah.
box.
Yeah.
It's like you're using anything that we teach the girls or anything that you're teaching your athletes, like we've been in your shoes. And I think that
Hmm.
also makes a difference for getting their buy-in
Yeah.
too. Because like Hana, we don't have they're not our kids. We're not
Yeah.
even their
Exactly.
coach. We're not writing the lineups. Like there's no pressure there. We just want to see our athletes succeed and to
Hmm.
see them light up when you're telling them, I used this is just a really cool full circle moment too.
Yeah, I know. And it's just that I think the mental game and all these tools that, we teach inside our program are unfortunately a lot of the times not taught by coaches or trainers. And that's not their fault, right? Like their
Right.
jobs, as what we know of from sports and when I was younger and when you were younger, is like, okay, yes, we're going to build on our fundamentals. We're going to work on the physical game because, in our heads, that's what wins games. That's what makes great ball players, or just great athletes in general. And I think, reflecting on my time as an athlete, reflecting on, coaches that I learned from, there's always these buzzwords and phrases of you got to just, get your head in the game, or, bounce back from failure. But I never learned how to do that. And so I just love, resources like this, like the Fearless Warrior program, where we're actually teaching and the girls get to learn tangible tools that are not groundbreaking. They're not rocket science. It's things that you can use in like 10 seconds, to just ground yourself, or to bounce back from failure, or to think of a different perspective on how to approach setbacks and obstacles. That I think just building that from even the age of, I mean, the youngest girls that we have are what, 10, right? Or like even 8 years old, I think.
Well, and we say they have to be 10 to enter the program, but
Yeah.
we've had an
Yeah.
8-year-old sneak into the program and we've had a 9-year-old sneak into the program. And the
Yeah.
retreat, we've had girls that young come to the retreat.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's just awesome to, hear so many different voices, or just see how these tools can actually improve performance or increase confidence, or whatever, as an individual athlete's goal is, you can get there. And I think that's an awesome part of sports psychology and mental performance, is that you have everything within you. You have all the answers inside of you. How can you capitalize on that to create the idea of success that you want to achieve? And I think that's what it's all
Absolutely.
about.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
and Kara even mentioned this when we did our podcast. Kara mentioned this that I thought I've told this to so many people now that it feels common sense to us. But one of
Hmm.
the things that Kara had said was if these tools can be learned by anybody, then it
Hmm.
levels the playing field. It's not like confidence or talent is just reserved
Yeah.
for people that just naturally have it. Everybody can use these, everybody can learn
Right.
these. Therefore, it kind of levels the playing field.
Hmm. That's a good point.
I mean, we
Yeah.
assume this, right? You're like, well, of course, why wouldn't you use mental performance? But I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of resistance still of like, if I sign my kid up for this, they're going to think something's wrong with them or I don't,
Hmm.
and I have some one-on-one clients where it's like total black ops, like we
Yeah.
don't talk about it, right? Because it could jeopardize either a recruiting process or a draft process. And it's like, okay, at some point, maybe it's 3 years from now, maybe it's 5 years, maybe it is 10 years from now. At some point, this isn't going to be taboo anymore. I would hope,
Hmm.
right? And it's
Yeah.
the same on the
I
mental health
hope.
side.
Yeah, for sure. And I love what you're talking about of, you don't have to seek these services out, or you don't have to seek out mental performance or sports psychology or even mental health counseling just when something is wrong. And I tell this is one of the first things that I told my athletes, when I first started in my internships and practicums. You don't have to wait until something's wrong, or wait until you're struggling, or wait until you're in an absolute slump and don't know what to do. Of course, that is maybe a great time to seek out these services, or to seek out these resources. But it's also, if you're the most confident you've ever felt, how can we maintain that? How can we continue that trajectory of feeling your most confident self or feeling your best self? And that goes into my whole idea of like a strengths based approach. Like, I don't need to necessarily pick apart in session with my athletes or in workshops with my teams of like, okay, let's see what's wrong here and how to fix it. Like, maybe that's definitely one part of my job, but it's also like, okay, it sounds like you're doing really great. Sounds like you're feeling really confident. What's been working for you? What hasn't been working for you? How can we continue this really positive trajectory that you're on? Or when adversity does strike, how can you bounce back quicker than you ever have before? Um, and I'm just all like, failure is going to happen. Mistakes are going to happen. Strikeouts are going to happen. It is so inevitable. So it's more of how can you bounce back from that? Do you have the skills? Are you equipped with the strategies to come back from that even stronger? And I think, yeah, that's what mental performance and we talk about mental toughness or mental strength or resilience. And like, that's kind of what it's all about.
Absolutely. And doesn't it make
Yeah.
you wish that you could just rewind the clock and let's go back to
Yeah.
2018. How about
Yeah.
2010? Like if we can rewind the clock, like let's just go back and even on the physical side of the game, right?
Yeah.
Like if I could go back and play my career knowing what I know now, not
Hmm.
only on the mental performance side, but also the advances on the physical side of the game,
Yeah.
but I think that's also a double-edged sword because I think there's so many resources and so
Hmm.
many things accessible that I think sometimes it can get blurry of like, well, who's the expert
Yeah.
and who do I listen to and what's founded in research and well, we just posted on Instagram the Dear Athlete, the most recent Dear Athlete. We posted about
Hmm.
the difference between neutral mindset and positive mindset and avoiding toxic positivity and
Yeah.
let's kind of talk about that. You were talking about the difference between motivational self talk and the instructional self talk, which is
Hmm.
huge. Kind of
Yeah.
talk about that eye opening moment where you're like, okay, like this is working far better than, you experience this in college, but then you're also experiencing this with the athletes that you're working with. Can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. So, with the concept of self-talk and how you were just mentioning motivational versus instructional self-talk, um, quick, definition if our listeners on here are kind of like, which one's which? Motivational self-talk are basically those phrases like "you got this" or "you are such a stud," "you're amazing," kind of motivational and encouraging phrases to use. Whereas instructional is kind of more task or like sport specific. So maybe that's keep your eye on the ball, or maybe you're fielding, a ground ball in the infield and it's stay low, or keep your glove down, or find your pitch, things like that. Um, and so I remember utilizing, of course, when I was doing my research on how to build confidence or how to be a better softball player, of course, self talk came up. And so the idea of self talk that I knew was, that motivational piece of, yeah, how can you say these encouraging and empowering and motivational phrases to yourself? Yes, I think that is so, so important. And then there's games like what I had, several games probably, where this one game in particular, I struck out 3 times in a row. And my phrases of motivational self-talk of "you got this, get the next one" were things that I didn't truly believe. And it was actually more discouraging than it was motivating, because I was like, I don't think I got the next one. I just struck out 3 times in a row and I don't feel great right now. I don't really feel confident. I don't feel like I can do it again. And so that's where my, maybe instructional self-talk came in of find your pitch, or, adjust on the inside pitch, or adjust on that rise ball. Or, just things that were more task specific to get my head out of, or to, get my struggles and things out of my head. And just focus on something super external, something that's more factual, kind of what we were talking about earlier today. And so I think self talk is a huge part of my game. And I love talking about that and providing that education to my athletes, because when they hear self talk, they again hear that exact same thing of motivational. And it's like, there's going to be times where you're not feeling motivated, you're not feeling confident. Because again, it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when you're going to face these struggles or face this adversity. Um, and so, yeah, I think again, to the point of, talking about positive psychology that we were saying earlier, it's not adding this element of toxic positivity and just slapping a band-aid on an open wound. It's how can we actually get to the root of what's going on? How can we actually analyze and observe, okay, this is my reality right now. These are my circumstances. I just struck out 3 times in a row and I don't feel great, but what can I do next?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really like being real with yourself of, yep, this is how I'm feeling right now. I don't really feel great at all. Or I feel like I'm really struggling right now, or I feel like I'm in a huge slump, and just kind of accepting it with open arms, because there's really nothing that we can do about it, about the past, obviously. And so it's like, how can I develop and build my resilience going forward so that when this happens again, or when I'm in this place of a slump, that I feel like I'm believing in myself that I can actually come out of it. And I'm feeling confident, maybe not in the moment, but I'm feeling confident in my own abilities to push forward and push through it.
Well, and that's the true definition of confidence is trust in
Yeah.
oneself, right? And
Hmm.
so the brain loves proof. And so if you're focusing on the proof of I am the greatest, well, there's not a whole lot of proof there, especially after you struck out
Hmm.
3 times. And so it's this realistic approach, this, what would a
Yeah.
sports announcer say? What are the facts? And if you can
Right.
say, okay, these are the facts and these are also the facts. I have prepared, I have practiced, I
Hmm.
do know how to swing the bat, I do know how to crush the inside pitch.
Yeah.
And I love that approach because parents, if you're listening, give you a little bit of tough love. It's called self-talk for a reason, because
Mm.
it's their self-talk, not your
Yeah.
self-talk. And so if you're getting eye rolls because you're telling your daughter, but you are good, Hana, you are a good hitter, you are a
Yeah.
good slapper, you got this, and you're getting eye rolls,
Hmm.
it's because it feels opposite of what their reality is.
Right. Yeah. That's so true. And it's hard to believe that when you're, an athlete and you're struggling and you're just in
The
in
muck.
the suck.
Yeah, you're in
Yeah, in
it.
the suck, in the muck. But I think, obviously with self-talk and the several other, tools and modules that you teach in the program, can go so far in an athlete's success, or just overall like athletes' satisfaction in their performance. Striking out 3 times in a row that one game, my satisfaction of performance was just getting the ball, putting the ball in play, and that would have been a win for me. But again, I think that's mental performance, that I wasn't aiming for a home run at that moment. It was like I just want to improve. I just want to be better. I just want to put the ball in play and make a play. Um, so yeah, there's so much that I feel like goes into sports psychology and mental performance, but it's the beauty of the complexity within it.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I
Yeah.
throw you a ringer question? We didn't really prep this one, but I would be
Yeah.
very curious to hear your answer. And, we don't really edit the podcast, but if we want to edit this, we totally can. I have to ask this question because, oh, I used to ask this question on podcast interviews, but
Hmm.
I know that you've had an experience, maybe even in your master's or even in your college experience. When is a time that you just felt like you failed massively? And how did you come on the other side of it?
Failed massively. I think there was a time during in my college years, my senior year of college, we didn't have the best team dynamics. There was lots going on, lots of transitions, and me as a senior, kind of putting this senior captaincy, or this role on a pedestal pretty much my whole life, of saying, okay, once you're a senior, you're going to be this type of leader. And I feel like, and after some lots of time of reflection, I feel like not necessarily failing massively, but I feel like I didn't do my best as a leader my senior year of college. And that came with, of course, like, we think of captaincy, we think of being a senior and being a leader as, oh, it's not that hard. At least maybe that was my personal opinion of being a leader and when I would step into my role as a senior. Um, but I think that I think about my college experience a lot and what leadership means, and what being a senior and a veteran on my team means. Um, and a lot of that, in terms, I mean, of course, we're all girls and we maybe have drama. There's just lots of things in college when, we're all failing or we're not winning a lot of games. And so that brings a lot of light, I think, to the table, of maybe things that are not going well. And so in that moment, of me and my fellow other seniors, we got together and we were like, how can we improve on our leadership, or what's going on right now that we can do as individuals that we have full control of? And so it was a lot of like checking ourselves, because a lot of the times as humans, we don't necessarily want to point the fingers on us. We want to put the blame on other people or say like, okay, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and just point the fingers elsewhere. That season, I think, was a lot of pointing the finger back of like, what are we doing that is maybe impacting the trajectory of our season right now, or what are we not doing that could be better as seniors or as leaders? It's a whole top down process, right, from the coaches to the senior captains and the leaders to the underclassmen and the new teammates that are coming on board. And so I think, yeah, a lot of that was just checking ourselves, being real with ourselves, using, our own expertise of leading by example. I think, leading with compassion was huge. And I'm not a parent at all. And I hope I am one day, but I know that parenting is hard, and not to, amount parenting to being a senior on a softball team. But I think that does come with that. There's a lot of parallels that I'm seeing with parents that we work with in the program, or just the messages that we want to give. 'Cause a lot of times we want, you want the best for your athletes and you want the best for your daughters. Um, and a lot of that does come with, as a leader, how can you model really positive behaviors for your kids and for your athletes? How can you provide communication and show them like, this is how you can effectively communicate without exactly telling them? I mean, our kids and athletes are watching every single move, whether we know it or not. And so I think all that to say, being a leader is hard, but that it is super doable and very manageable. And us being able to reflect is just super important. That's a really important step to even making that change that we want. It's kind of a long-winded story with that,
But
but
thank
I
you for
think
sharing that and
yeah, I
being
think there's lots
vulnerable
of
with your
messages.
story.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
I think so often we forget to, and we can kind of end it with this, and then we have to ask you the infamous podcast question. But I think the mistake that we make sometimes as practitioners or even as parents seeking out mental performance is, let's just do the skills. Let's just
Mhm.
visualize. Let's just figure out that self talk. And I think you alluded to that self reflection. And I
Mhm.
know that I've shared this analogy, maybe not on the podcast, but if I haven't, here we go. You would never take your daughter to a hitting coach and have that hitting coach immediately start changing things in her swing
Mhm.
without first watching her swing, either by video or just
Yeah.
by taking some cuts. And so we have to watch the swing. Well, what is that with her mindset? We have to figure out, what are those thoughts that she's telling herself? We have to self reflect. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What are you experiencing out there? Get curious, ask questions, even self discovery, right?
Mhm.
We've got our Conversations to Create Confidence guide that we give out to parents, but that's also a reflection guide for athletes. You could print it
Mhm.
out and print these questions out and self reflect. When am I most confident? Who's affecting my confidence? What situations feel out of control? And that really is that awareness piece that I think sometimes we just want to rush and skip over. But if you skip over that, you're
Yeah.
losing that athlete's sense of self and what they're facing. And going back to the first part of this conversation of, how do we build rapport if you don't know what they're struggling with or what they're facing?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You hit the nail right on the head. I love that.
Boom. How's that for a mic drop to close
Mic
out? I love
drop.
this. Okay, so the question is, if you were a time traveler and you could go back in time and give your past self one message, what is Hana telling herself?
Oh, so many messages, but one that really hits home with me is to be open-minded. And that sounds so cliche and it sounds so like small. I can't imagine where my life would have been if I stuck to that one path that I thought that I was passionate about, or that one idea of being an athletic trainer or wanting to go down that route of exercise science and physical therapy. Well, that is so important. And I actually still am very fascinated about it. But thinking about taking the leap and just being so open minded to opportunities that are right in my lap and what I wanted to do with them. I think open mindedness comes with so much beauty. It's scary, but you are built for this. And I think, yeah, if I could just shake my 18-year-old self and be like, be open minded, I think, I mean, that visual is hilarious to me. But yeah, being open minded because you have no idea what's on the other side of that door. So,
And
yeah,
we are going to be having a whole nother podcast conversation on the other side of this, just, oh my gosh, 6 months from now. Just
seven
imagine where
months
your
away.
life's going to be
Yeah,
6 months from now. And we
I
didn't even
know.
really talk about it, but you're headed to Arizona. You're going to be working with the Diamondbacks organization. This has been a
Yeah,
goal of yours. You've wanted to kind of make and break it into the MLB. And I'm just
yeah.
so proud of you and so excited to
Thanks,
see what
AB.
unfolds for you. And I want to ask this same exact question in, November, December, of like, what would you tell Hana of today in May? And you're
Yeah.
going to
Oh
have
my gosh.
so many more answers.
I love that. Yes, I'm so excited to kind of talk more about that and what's to come. But I know time will tell. We'll see.
We'll see. Where is the best place? And obviously, if you guys didn't know this, 90% of our social media, Hana curates. So Hana finds all these amazing posts and quotes and things to share. And we work on a lot of things together to get information out about our enrollments, our programs, our camps, our retreats. All of that is Hana. So give Hana some love on social media. Send her a DM, send us a DM. Tell her how much you love our social media. Where can we follow you personally? What's the best place to kind of stay in touch if parents or families kind of want to follow your journey through your mental performance career?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, place number one, Fearless Fast Pitch. I'll be, if you just denote that you're trying to reach Hana, I'll definitely see the DMs. My personal Instagram is Hana_DeGuzman. If any parents or players have questions about my experience in sports psychology, my experience as an athlete, I am so open. I'm such an open book. I love talking about, my experiences, my struggles, my wins, my failures. So yeah, please feel free if you have any questions. Yeah, you guys know where to reach me.
That just gave me a really good idea. And I'm just going to say it while we're recording. We bring in guest speakers all the time for the program. We should have a meet and greet for anyone because I've had so many messages now that I can't keep track of it of girls that have graduated from our program. And maybe you don't
Mhm.
even know this, but this has inspired like we've had girls that have gone through our program. We've been in business now for 5 years. Some of these girls are getting their college degrees, and some of them, Hana, are choosing to pursue careers in sports psychology. So we should
Oh,
totally have just like a little career path night as a guest speaker. That would
yes.
be
Oh my
awesome.
gosh. I love that. Chills. Chills are running through. I love that.
Let's go.
Trailblazing. Trailblazing,
Trailblazer.
inspiring, empowering. We're doing all the things. Um, yeah, that's awesome.
So good. Hana, thank you for your time and your expertise and your stories. I love it so much. As always, thank you for being on the pod.
Thanks for having me, AB. And thanks for listening, Fearless fam. I appreciate you all.